Okay, in this tutorial, we're going to learn how to do something that's important for a lot of reasons. If you were to create a game where you had moving objects, you need to know how to move them around in whatever platform you're using to create them, right? So with JavaScript, HTML, CSS, this whole web development package, I'm going to show you how to do just that. I'm going to show you how you can change the position of elements on the page. So it says start out using some code like this. Let's just copy this into a new HTML file using our favorite editor, Caret. I already have that open here. And let's make a new file. Paste, save. Let's just save this as positioning.html. Okay, and let's test this out, what it looks like. Command O or Control O. Where did that go? There it is, positioning. All right, so all this does, as you can see, is it draws a red square. And if we go back to the code that produced this result, looks like the only element we have is a div, and it's given the ID red square. In fact, we didn't really need to have that on its own, or on a different line. We could have just that right there. It's an opening div tag, a closing div tag, and the only attribute is an ID. Well, the cool thing about having an ID is then you can apply CSS to it using this method inside of the style tag. So inside of the style tag, if you wanted to give a specific element some styling or formatting, you just use the hashtag or the pound sign, whatever that character is, and then the name of the ID for that element. So of course this is red square. So we just changed its background color to be red, its width and its height to be 30, and that's assumed to be pixels if you don't put px. If you wanted to say %, that would be different. Watch this. So I save that, I refresh it. Now it's 30% of the total width and total height of this screen. If I changed the width of the screen, you'll notice that changes how big the object is, because now it's a percentage of the width rather than a set number of pixels. So if you want to be specific, it's a good idea to put px. But if you don't put anything, it'll just assume that it's pixels. Px is short for pixel. Anyway, and then we also, in order to make it so it's at a different position on the screen than it's supposed to be by default, according to the placement of whatever elements you have already on the screen, you have to set its positioning to be absolute. Watch what happens if I don't have absolute positioning. So I take out that attribute of the CSS. Now, even though I specified below that its leftmost pixel is at spot 300 and its topmost pixel is at 100, it didn't put it where we wanted it, right? Because the positioning is not absolute. See, if I change this even more, I can make this like 500 to the left and 900 from the top. It's not going to affect where it actually is unless that attribute is there, unless we specify that the position is absolute. This lets us use the x and y coordinate plane with the pixels. And because 900 pixels is taller than my screen's height, the object is off of the screen right now. So let's make it a little bit smaller, like 400. And you can see now it's 400 pixels from the top. That's what this attribute means. So 500 pixels from the left, 400 pixels from the top. Okay, so what is the assignment here? What does it even say? It says the cool thing is we can use JavaScript. What did I skip here? Using CSS, we can position an element on the screen. If we set the position attribute to be absolute, we can specify those x and y coordinates by setting its left and top attributes. I already showed you how we can do that, right? Using that code. Now it says the cool thing is we can use JavaScript to edit that CSS. We can change its position dynamically. So using an interval, I'm going to do just that. I'm going to edit the left pixel position so that it goes from one side of the screen to another. And if you remember, we did an interval in the previous assignment, but I'll just create more code from scratch here, showing you how to do that. Let's just say when the window loads, or I guess I could have copied this in here, huh? We'll just say when the window loads, we'll start a function. and it's just going to contain all of this stuff here. So we want to set an interval, and an interval, of course, contains a function that's going to be run, as well as a number of milliseconds between each interval. And we'll do 10, so this is every 100th of a second. It's going to do the process in here. And the process we want to do, of course, is to change the position of that red square. So let's start out with the position as a variable. Before this even gets run at all, we need to specify its starting value. So we created a variable called x and set it to be 0. And then inside of this interval, I'm just going to increase that x. I'm going to say x plus plus, which of course means we're going to add 1 each time. So every 100th of a second, it's going to add 1 to the x position, to the pixel position on the x-axis, so left to right. And then I need to just use that value x when I'm defining the CSS, the left attribute of the CSS in JavaScript. So the way we do that is first we have to access the element by its ID. You can just copy and paste this in if you don't want to type it. Oops, there we go. And now we can just say red square dot style dot left equals x. And you'll notice when I run this, it works, hopefully. Let's see. Yay! So it started at x equals 0, and then every 100th of a second, it adds 1 to the x coordinate. So it's moving to from the left to the right, because as x gets bigger, we're moving from the left to the right. Okay, so the assignment says to change the size and the color of the square. That's easy. We can make it yellow. Now it's yellow. We can make it a custom color. If you didn't know already, you can define the red, the green, and the blue value using hexadecimal format. So the first 2 characters, 0 through F, represent the red value. So if I want all of the red on, I can do FF. If I want all of the green on, I can do FF. And if I want none of the blue on, I can do 0, 0. So that's actually a yellow color. All red on, all green on. You'll notice it's yellow. See? But if I do only half of the green on, so what would that be? I actually don't even know. What if I just did F0? That's going to be close to yellow still, probably. Let's see. Oops, another 0. Yeah, it's still pretty yellow color. But if I did something less than F, okay, I've gone on a tangent here. Hexadecimal format is base 16. If you don't want to even worry about this, you don't have to. I'm just trying to think through what the actual numbers in base 16 would be. Let's just try the number 8. So now that's halfway in between on and off for green, and that's why we get an orange color. If we had orange, or if we had the green all the way off, then all that would be left, of course, is this FF representing all of the red on, and that's why it's red. If I turned on all of the red and all of the blue, that turns into magenta. If I turned on all of the green and all of the blue, that is cyan, which is like aqua blue, light blue. And any combination of numbers or letters to F will create a custom color. So we could do like F4, 3, B, C, or 2C. Let's see what that does. It's still kind of a red color because it's such a high red value here and low values for these other 2. So let's take away that first F. Let's make it 2 as well. And this creates some kind of a jungle green, a really dark, dark jungle green, because the green one is the highest value, but not by too much. Anyway. Okay, we spent way more time on that than we probably needed to. That's the easy part, right? Change the color. Change the size of the square is also very easy. You can just, instead of 30, make it 60 pixels or 80, 90 pixels for how tall it is. There you go. Okay, but the other part says we need to make the square start at the bottom of the screen and move to the top. All right, how do we do that? Well, instead of using the x-axis, going from bottom to top uses a different axis, right? We've got x and y. X represents left and right. Y represents up and down, okay? So going from the bottom to the top is definitely on the y-axis. So instead of even bothering with the y, or the x, let's just make it a y. And instead of having it increase our x, because that doesn't exist anymore, let's make it a y. But here's the crucial part. We don't want to be editing the left attribute anymore. We want it to be editing the top attribute. So let's just change that to say top. And now you can see it's increasing the top's value, which is how far it is from the top. So it's moving downward. Well, how could we make it go the opposite direction? Start at the bottom, move toward the top. Well, maybe instead of starting with y equals 0, we start with y equaling, oh, I don't know, how tall is this screen? Maybe 800, 600? Let's just try 600. But then instead of going upward, let's make it go decrease. Well, okay, so here's the funny thing about graphics. Most graphic windows have an inverted y-axis. I know you're probably used to, in math class, starting with y at the bottom and increasing going upward. But in most graphic windows, gaming, creating like Photoshop, those kind of things, the x and y coordinate starts at the top left of the screen. So increasing the x-axis goes from left to right, increasing on the y-axis goes from the top to the bottom. So it's inverted. Y increases as you move downward. So by decreasing the y value, we're going to be going upward. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's test that out. So as you can see, it started at 600, or actually it started at 400 and then jumped to 600 immediately. I don't know if you caught that. See, it jumps right there. Hopefully the screen casting, or the screen recorder catches that. If you didn't want that jump, of course, you could just make the beginning value be 600. So now it starts at 600 when I refresh the page, and it just moves upward. All right, so there you have it. That is moving and positioning elements.